The Phillies lose another brutally frustrating game. They get shut out in St. Louis, and the playoff chances are getting tight. Arizona, San Diego, and them. Who's going to find a way in? We talk about it on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. We're going to talk about Dave Dombrowski's recent podcast appearance on John Heyman's show, talking about how he feels about his time in Philadelphia, his future, and kind of where he's at right now, because I know he's in the crosshairs for pretty much every Phillies fan currently. So we got to react to what he has to say for himself. We'll also talk about Luis Arraez's cold streak, which continued last night. He's 0 for his last 16 at the plate. One of the worst stretches of his career. Of course it happens as soon as he becomes a Philly. But first, we got to talk about last night's game and the implications for the postseason picture. So the Phils, they lose 2-0 to the Cardinals. Christopher Sanchez was awesome. He gets pulled from the game. Him and Don Mattingly had, it seems like, a little bit of competing ideas on whether or not he should have been pulled. Sanchez was like, I'll never take myself out of the game. Don Mattingly said he was done, and we had that conversation. Sanchez said it was his choice, but either way, he gets pulled. McFarland gives up one. Meza gives up one. You lose 2-0 because you hit into 4 double plays, the first time since 2023 that the Phillies have done that. So a 3-year in the making bad offensive performance last night. And I feel like that's par for the course for the Phillies this year. They'll have a nice, solid win, kind of bookmarked or bookended, I should say, by just brutal, frustrating, how in the world did it happen losses. And that's why they can't pull away from anybody. And that's why they're not in comfortable playoff position as they sit right now in the National League postseason picture. Just looking at the wild card, because they're not going to win the division. They're 8.5 back on the Atlanta Braves right now with a month and a half to play. They're not winning the NL East. So your way in is via the wild card. And with that, you are in some tight company. The Chicago Cubs are 6.5 games up on a wild card position. They're the top wild card. The Phillies, the Diamondbacks, and the Padres all sit at 64 and 57. They're all tied. There are 2 spots available. Well, let's do some simple math. 2 spots, 3 teams. One of those teams, at least, is going to be on the outside looking in. Not to mention, the Marlins are 2.5 out of a postseason spot. The St. Louis Cardinals are 3.5. We are playing right now. You gave them a little bit of life yesterday with that win. Even though Sanchez threw 6 scoreless and dominated, you just didn't have any offense created whatsoever. And now you're in a dogfight. And this was always my worry with the Philadelphia Phillies when it came to the division. I didn't think it would be an issue with the wild card. Go back to, well, I'll just tell you what's going to happen because I don't want to make you go back and do the research. I already just appreciate you taking the time to listen to or watch the show. But if you were to go back to the NL East roundtable, where I talked with the guys from Locked On Mets, Marlins, Braves, and Nationals, and we did our chat ahead of the season. Hey, who do you think's winning the division? What are the big storylines? This, that, and the other thing. I did not pick the Phillies to win the National League East. And the reasoning I used was that when they won the division last year, the Mets completely collapsed down the stretch. And that was the only other team in contention with you. The Braves were just snake-bitten injury-wise. They had already cleared the Mets. Sure, they played the Phillies well. They played nobody else well. And that just opened the door for the Phils to comfortably win the division. The year before, the Mets were nowhere close to the Phillies, even though they knocked them out of the postseason, like record-wise in the regular season. They weren't winning that division, and the Atlanta Braves had so many injuries that it opened it up again. The Phillies had not won one of those tight divisional races where it's just like, hey, we're in mid-September, and we're a half game out or a half game up, and you've got to win down the stretch in order to make it in. Because you know what that means? That means pressure. That means the lights are getting bright. That means that you're essentially playing playoff games for the second half of the month of September. Some teams, that pushes you to better performance. Think back to 2007 when the Phils tracked down the Mets and made the postseason right ahead of the year where they would end up winning the World Series in '08. That was a team that when the lights got bright, they got better. This is a team that when they get put into big-time spots, they crumble. Fundamental mistakes and poor managing against the Dodgers last year. Complete collapse against the Mets the year before. Diamondbacks in the NLCS in 2023. Choke job with 2 games at home. And I always thought that if this team gets put in a pressure spot in the regular season, I don't have faith in them based on what I've seen the past 3 years to come through and be their best in those spots. That was about potentially winning the division, whether it was Atlanta, whether it was the Mets, maybe a surprise team in Miami that caused them a little agita down the stretch. I thought that could be a tough environment for them. I didn't plan for that for the wild card spot because I figured, hey, if you're at least in the race for the division and maybe you lose it by 2 or 3 games because, you can't string wins together and guys aren't swinging it well, then at least you're going to be one of the top wild card teams. You'll be in, and hey, maybe that ends up being better for you because whoever wins the NL East is like has been a guaranteed first playoff series exit for the past, 4 or 5 years now. This has now become even sketchier because your safety net is gone. If you fail to win the division, you got the safety net of the wild card. There is no safety net for letting the Padres potentially pass you, letting the Diamondbacks pass you, letting the Marlins catch you, letting the Cardinals catch you. And the Phillies, mathematically, are in danger. Like, they cannot win consistently enough. The game that they won with Andrew Painter on the mound 2 days ago was the first time since May 18th they've won a game that their 5th starter started. Aaron Nola, when they won a couple weeks ago, was the first time since like late June that they had done that. They cannot win consistently enough, and where they put themselves is you pretty much have to win every game started by Wheeler, Sanchez, or Luzardo. That puts pressure on those guys to be basically perfect. And it also means that the offense can't have days like they did last night, where you go out there and you get 6 scoreless innings from a starter who's trying to save the bullpen and the team, and you give him 0 run support. Those are opportunities that the Phillies cannot miss, and they have missed a lot of them this year. And as I look at it, I say, okay, well, are they going to make the playoffs? That's ultimately the question it comes down to, right? My answer to that question would still be yes. I still believe that they are going to make the postseason. But we did a poll on our X account over at 97.5 The Fanatic this morning. I do morning sports talk radio over there and produce the morning show. 71% of responders to that poll, there were over 500 votes on it, said that they believe the Phillies will miss the postseason. Only 29% of this fan base, at least based on that poll we did, using that as the sample size, only 29% believe they're actually going to make the playoffs. Not win a playoff series, not win a playoff game, not win the National League pennant, not win the World Series. Make the playoffs. In an expanded playoff field that has changed the sport significantly, you can't even find your way in. I'm not ready to have that conversation about what that would mean for where this team is and the issues that that would show and how everything would have to change. But that is a real possibility, and I've been talking about it for weeks. I'm not saying probability. The second I start telling you it's a probability that they miss the playoffs, it's probably over. All right? So when we get there, you'll know. I'm not quite there yet because they still have great starting pitching at the top, and they have talented guys in the lineup, and I believe they're going to look better for long stretches of this last couple of month period than they have recently. I do still think they have good baseball left in them. But good baseball isn't going to help you sleep warm at night when the World Series is at the bar. So they are in danger of having the Padres or the Diamondbacks or the Cardinals or the Marlins or these teams overtake them. And then you've got to fight from behind to even make it in. Sure, we talked about 22 and the comparisons between this year and that year. That team at least was there and just had to hold on. This team might have to claw their way back. And September is a really tough stretch for them. So you might ask yourself, well, Connor, what if they just hold serve and they end up tied with a team like the Diamondbacks or the Padres? Those are the two teams they're tied with right now. If the season ended today, we love those exercises, right? The tiebreakers for the wild card or for any playoff seeding, the first thing you go to if the records are identical is head-to-head record. The Phillies, thank God, took all 6 from the San Diego Padres. Remember, back-to-back sweeps against the Padres earlier this year when they were completely unable to hit with runners in scoring position, the Padres, that is. So they hold the tiebreaker over the Padres no matter what happens the rest of the year. If those two teams are tied, Phils get in. The Diamondbacks took the first series against the Phillies. There is another series coming up later on in the season where that'll be huge. If you sweep them, you would take the tiebreaker. If you take 2 or 3, it's even, and then it goes to the next tiebreaker, which is your intra-divisional record, games against the NL East or games against the NL West in the case of the Diamondbacks, who did better against their division. So that we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But there's just an idea of what the tiebreakers are. So if the season ended today, the Phils are still in via a technicality and a tiebreaker, and one that was created by a team that was playing much better at the time and a Padres team that couldn't get anything done whatsoever. If you are not winning pretty much 3 out of every 5 games the rest of the way, you're going to find yourself on the outside looking in. They need to make hay. And I don't think they have the horses to do it. Well, horses don't make hay. We'll work on the analogy. See, I'm not used to this. I'm used to this team just finding their way into the postseason. And that's why all the people who would complain about, well, how they got there and the postseason exits and stuff like that, I get it. But there's a world that y'all aren't ready for, which is Red October doesn't exist anymore. A lockout looming, this team getting older, tied into long contracts, they're in a dangerous spot. And if that pressure seeps even further into the locker room, because clearly it already has to some extent, that would be the failure of all failures. That's where it's clean house time. Firings, trades, releases, whatever you got to do. I'm just warning you, that will be Armageddon for the Philadelphia Phillies. Ahead of Armageddon for the sport, it will not be a fun offseason. I don't think you needed my quote-unquote expert opinion to tell you if the Phillies miss the playoffs, it won't be a fun offseason. But if you don't think it's real, last night should show you how real the chances of them not getting in actually are. Now, something that I don't think is real is the commentary from fans that I'm seeing on Luis Arraez's struggles. I'll talk to you about what he's doing struggle-wise, why it is near historic for him, and why there's a certain coach that has absolutely nothing to do with it as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Let's talk about Odoo, though, because running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. You got one app for accounting and another for inventory and another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. How does that make sense? Shouldn't you be able to communicate one department to the other through the same system? Well, with Odoo, you can. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. It makes everything so much easier, from sales and accounting to inventory and marketing. Everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. I mean, the best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. Just look at the Phils, talented team, not being successful right now. It's true in sports. It's also true in business. I mean, sometimes you just can tell, hey, this person isn't understanding what my department is doing, and vice versa. You could send a billion emails, or you could get Odoo where you're all on the same system. Now, which one of those sounds more efficient? Which one of those sounds more beneficial? It's definitely checking out Odoo. So great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Go ahead and check out our friends over at Odoo. Let's talk about FanDuel here because baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think's going to hit a home run in their game. And if you're right, you're going to receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or you're keeping an eye on matchups across the league. However you want to do it, every game has someone capable of going deep. And now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. So what I would do is look at the lefties. Phils are facing a righty tonight. Take a look at the left-handed hitters. What do you think? Kyle Schwarber stays hot? Maybe you use him. Bryce Harper, due for one? Maybe you use him. Bryce is hot, been swinging as well as anybody on this team. He's got a little bit of pop. Brandon Marsh hasn't hit one for a while. Maybe he could run into one. There are a lot of candidates just on the Phillies. And that's not even looking at the team they're playing in the Cardinals or other teams around baseball. So take a look around, but take advantage of this. Because if you're ready to play your game today, you can join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. So the Luis Arraez stuff, man, I'm going to read you some stuff from my social media last night. This is not necessarily just what I tweeted. It's the responses that I got. This has gotten insane. As I pull this up, I'll tell you why we're talking about it. Arraez is 0 for his last 16 at-bats. Yeah, that's bad. For like an average Major League Baseball player, that's a regular slump. For Luis Arraez, that's a crater. This dude, his career-long streak is 19 straight at-bats without a hit. He goes 0 for today. He will have set a new career high in at-bats without a hit, assuming he doesn't walk. But you go out and you acquire a guy who's won 3 batting titles, who is on pace to win his 4th. He looks good in his first couple of games, and then the guy just, forgets how to hit? It seems very Philadelphia. I know I saw a lot of people saying that about it. Of course, the infallible slump-proof contact hitter comes here in slumps, and one of the worst of his career. What did we do to deserve this? And my answer to you is, I don't know, man. Maybe this is penance for LeBron being here or an Eagles Super Bowl of past years. I don't know why we have to go through what we have to go through in this city, but Luis Arraez slumping is not something that anybody expected. I made the CT guarantee yesterday that he was going to have a hit, at least one, maybe 2. He did not. Now I look like an idiot because I should believe in the curse of Philadelphia sports, but I guess I overlooked that. So Arraez is struggling right now. And last night, I put out a tweet about it. Luis Arraez has gotten monstered by the Phillies' bad vibes. There's no other way to explain it. Now, let me explain that tweet. Right? Monstered, if you're not familiar, the movie Space Jam, where they stole the powers of professional basketball players. Like, I think somebody stole his powers. And I say the bad vibes of the Phillies, that's not me saying, oh, there's guys in the locker room that are making him feel uncomfortable so he can't hit. I'm saying just the overall nebulous feeling of dread that this team has about themselves and the fan base has about them is just leading to it's taking logic, it's throwing it to the wind and saying, hey, whatever the most frustrating thing can happen to players on this team or fans in this fan base, it will happen right now because that's the 2026 Philadelphia Phillies experience. Outside of 3 starting pitchers, the closer, and maybe Brandon Marsh, right? That has been largely the Philadelphia Phillies season. You can throw stretches for Schwarber and Harper in there, but that's where we're at. And listen to some of these responses that I got. Guarantee you Kevin Long was telling him you got to start trying to hit the ball in the air more. He all of a sudden can't hit. You can't make this up. This has Kevin Long and his launch angles written all over it. Kevin Long with a gif of Fairly Odd Parents where it's Timmy's mom saying everything I touch dies. Mattingly made him a cleanup hitter, and he swings for homers. 2 words, Kevin Long. And immediately, the flood of people blaming the Phillies hitting coach. I said it yesterday. I will say it again. I need y'all to calm down. Everybody take a deep breath for me on the Luis Arraez thing. 1, he is going to be fine. 2, the hitting coach did not mess up the guy who's been a 3-time batting champ. He's had better hitting coaches, worse hitting coaches, indifferent hitting coaches. 3, batting cleanup is not causing him to not be able to hit the baseball. Last night, the double play he hit into, that was home to first in the 8th inning, the fact that he was batting cleanup got your best contact hitter in a spot where a single ties the ball game. He is not getting screwed up by the hitting coach, by the manager, by his teammates. It is just a slump. It is. I know it sounds improbable. I know it sounds crazy, far-fetched. It's not as exciting. Would I get more podcast clicks if I told you, here's how Kevin Long has ruined Luis Arraez's swing? Probably. It's not what I'm here to do. They're not messing with his swing. He's cold right now. It's a bad time to get cold because a lot of eyes are on this Phillies team right now, and he's supposed to be one of the guys that's a savior. No, I don't think anyone's mad at Arraez. I don't take it that way. I haven't seen that. Will they get mad at him if he continues to slump? Yeah. Will he hear boos if they come back from this trip, St. Louis and then Minnesota, and he comes back and he's still scuffling? They play back here in Philly? He may. And that'll be something that'll be a first experience for him. Every Philly athlete, I'm sure, remembers the first time they were booed. Even the great ones get booed here. But I don't think the Phillies are screwing him up. And I don't think it's where he's hitting. And I don't think it's who he's hitting against. And I definitely don't think it's who his hitting coach is. But this is a lesson in and of itself that we need to know about ourselves. Sometimes, yak crazy, right? If the Phils lose a big-time game, sometimes I'll do some dumb stuff. I'll like break a chair in my apartment and lose my mind. I'm a fan just like you. And some people might call that, you got anger issues. I don't know. I'm pretty happy in 99% of my life. Just this damn baseball team or these damn sports teams here in Philadelphia. That's the only thing. But I recognize that. I know that that makes me a little nuts. I can see in the mirror. You're entitled to be able to do stuff like that because you're passionate, but you have to recognize it as well. I think what we need to recognize right now is all Phillies conversations. This team has made a large portion of this fan base, and at points myself included, flat out insane. I'm seeing crazy stuff. Sell the team, trade all the players, move them, play this guy here, that guy there. It's this, that, the other thing. We're all trying to come up with theories. We're all trying to point the finger of blame at somebody. They're just not playing good baseball. They haven't played consistently. They're a stale roster that's run it back one too many times. And that's probably why, if they miss the playoffs, they will have missed the playoffs. But Arraez and the Kevin Long thing needs to stop. And I know we just have this irrational anger when it comes to our baseball team right now. But there are very few sane takes on the Philadelphia Phillies right now. Short of the actual beat reporters, if you talk to anybody who's a fan of this team for more than 2 minutes, they're going to tell you something that you think is crazy. And then the next person is going to tell you something that you think is crazy. And the next person, because we are just fried in the brain with the way this season has gone. I get that. I don't fault you. It's not your fault for saying crazy stuff. The Phillies have made you insane, right? If you're in a padded room, in a straitjacket, but somebody else put you there, and with how they treated you or what they did, is it really your fault? And I'm not blaming Phillies fans for pointing the finger at Kevin Long. I'm just telling you that's not what's going on. But I'm also arguing with I don't mean this as like demeaning, but it's the best example I could think of. Arguing with a Phillies fan right now is arguing with a rabid animal. You're not thinking clearly, but I get it. I get where the anger comes from. I do. And I get why you're upset with this team. There are plenty of reasons to be upset with them. But sometimes you just start flailing and guys get blamed that don't deserve blame. Kevin Long's not perfect. Are there things he could do better? I'm sure. But ultimately, the hitting coach didn't ruin Luis Arraez. And ultimately, I think Luis Arraez is still going to be fine. It's just another one of those, how in the world does this keep happening to us moments of the Philadelphia Phillies season? Well, a lot of people would answer that question, How does this keep happening to us? With a point of the index finger directly at the president of baseball operations. Well, it just so happens that Dave Dombrowski sat down with John Heyman for a podcast interview. He talked about his future as a front office member of some franchise, whether it's the Phillies or elsewhere. And he also talked about what surprised him with the team this year. If we're going to crush the guy, and we've been crushing the guy, we have to also listen to what he says. I know we don't like him right now, but he deserves that right. As anybody does in any type of argument, or anyone who's getting type of blame, they get a chance to plead their case. If we don't like their case, we go right back to the pitchforks and torches approach. But I'll tell you what he had to say next that was most intriguing to me as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. A big shout out, a big thank you to our friends at Amazon for this limited break. This back to school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy the back to school shopping experience can be. Starts with a few items on the list, and then all of a sudden, you got a billion things. You're shopping for supplies and clothes and lunch gear and tech and about 10 other things that you didn't see coming. Yeah, some of it's on the list, some of it your kid just wants, and you're out $1 billion before you even get your kids to the bus stop for their first day of school. It adds up fast. So how do you avoid that? Let's say you've got expensive supplies and you're going to a bunch of places. You're like, I can't find this anywhere for a reasonable deal. Maybe like a calculator that is one of the most expensive things that you've ever bought anybody to go to school. Well, while you're trying to figure that out, maybe use the calculator, type in on it, and figure out how much money you're going to be saving by using Amazon. They've got the best deals in the business, and they can also get you stuff fast, real fast. They have all kinds of features, including the next day by 7 a.m. prime feature, so that if you have something last second that you need to get for your kid, you can do that with them as well. So remember, with Amazon's low back to school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. Dave Dombrowski was on John Heyman's podcast, The Show. Yeah, it's just called The Show, which is kind of just one of those things, right? It's like naming your dog. I get it. Major Leagues is called The Show, but The Show with John Heyman is kind of hard to explain what that is. Anyway, more important fish to fry than what the name of John Heyman's podcast is. Dombrowski's on, and he was asked a couple of really interesting questions about where the season's going, his thoughts on Don Mattingly, his thoughts on what happened with the team, his thoughts on himself. If you're going to listen to this, I will tell you, if you really think Dave Dombrowski is going to come out and say at this point, yeah, I did a crappy job this year. Everybody in Philadelphia should be mad at me. I did not put together a good enough team. You're kidding yourself if you think he's going to just like flat out say that. Tim Kelly, who covers the Phillies for Ron Pattison, asked Dombrowski earlier this year, like, is it fair to question you about your job so far and everything like that, the job that you've done? And Dombrowski essentially laughed in his face. Like, he is not looking to give himself the criticism, the level of what the fan base is giving him. And maybe the criticism of the fan base is unrightfully strong. That's the debate that we can have, right? But if you think he's going to come out and be like, yeah, I need to get fired, I stink, I got a bridge to sell you. So he talks about first, the first clip I heard was about Don Mattingly and where that stands, and if he wants him back for another year and everything. And he's like, yeah, the Alex Cora thing popped back up, and he's like, I don't know what the future is for Don. I haven't talked to Alex Cora about it, but we know that him and Cora are close. We know people have reported there's interest there. Like, I'm not really thinking about that right now. We're in season, and we'll figure that out. Cool, fair enough. He didn't like double down on Don Mattingly being here. And he didn't say, hey, Cora's a guy in waiting. So that's pretty much how you should answer that. Nothing out of question there. There's been an interesting theory floating around for years about Dombrowski, that if there's an expansion team in Nashville, which is an expectation in the next couple of years of Major League Baseball, that he will then go down there. He has a residence in Nashville. He has friends down there, goes down to Nashville, takes over that franchise. That's his retirement job. Well, he said he doesn't really think that's a place where he's at. not physical place of Nashville, but he's like, at this point, I don't know if I want to do that, but I want to be in Philadelphia if I continue to be a front office member. And he talked about his health and his age still allowing him to be good at what he does or be able to do it to a level that he's comfortable with. I know people hear that comfortable word and they're like, he's comfortable with everything. We got a good club. I know. I'm just giving you the information right now. So it doesn't sound like he's jetting to Nashville anytime soon. And the way he talks about his relationship with the the management here in Philadelphia, sounds like that relationship's pretty good. We've heard reports about extensions for Dave Dombrowski, not his contract. Here in Philadelphia, we can't fathom it. Nationally, they're like, it's a certainty that he's going to get one or he's going to be here as long as he wants. It seems like he's pretty comfortable. And then he talked about just the issues with the team. Now, this is something that I want people to understand. We go too sensationalized with our criticism sometimes. He has no idea. He's an idiot. He's a moron. This guy's dumb. You need to fire him. He couldn't flip burgers. Like, okay. He talked about the bullpen not being nearly as good as they hoped. The starting pitching, the top guys being really good and relying on them, but having to be careful about how we use them because they're a huge part of our team and we need those guys to get where we're going. The biggest thing he said that's been surprising to him this season in the team's performance is that the offense is so inconsistent in run scoring. We have the talent. I don't get why we can't score consistently. And I'm going to tell you guys a secret. Dave Dombrowski's absolutely right. Like, bullpen relievers are finicky. Rotation, top three, we're going to be good. Back two, we're going to be a gamble. Fortunately, you lost both of those gambles to this point, but we'll see. Maybe you can get a backdoor cover here late in the year as far as that's concerned. But the offense has been the biggest disappointment based on where you should expect them to go, right? Like, the bullpen's probably underperformed the most, but they are also inherently volatile. The offense just not being able to consistently score runs is a major, major, major problem with this team. Now, the angry fan will say, Dombrowski, you put this roster together. Here's just what I want you to think about. He listed all of the things that we've been complaining about. If you think he doesn't see it, you're not giving him enough credit. If you think he can't fix it, that's a proper criticism. Do you see the difference there? You don't have to call the guy the dumbest front office member in baseball or anything. Can you say that he hasn't done a good enough job over the past couple of years with the Phillies? That's totally fair. So, to defend the right of a guy with a Hall of Fame resume, if you say, well, Dombrowski doesn't see it, he's a moron, I'm going to be forced to push back on the basis of upholding the truth. If you say, I want him fired because he has not done a good enough job with this team, I'm not going to argue with you on that. If I can move on from Dave Dombrowski at the end of this year, I would move on from Dave Dombrowski at the end of this year. Unfortunately, it's not up to me as the host of Locked On Phillies. It's up to John Middleton, and he doesn't return any of my calls on the consultations on what he should do. So we're going to continue to fight the fight. The Phils will continue to fight the fight. 2:15 this afternoon, Zach Wheeler on the mound against Lee. And that's going to be a situation for him to go out and try to do what Christopher Sanchez did. And then hang on for dear life as the bullpen implodes. Business as usual for the Phils. They can still win the series against St. Louis. We'll be talking about it tomorrow. We're also going to have some fun conversation about the Field of Dreams game, which is a really cool experience. And it also means we don't have to talk just about the Phillies losing again if they lose. So that'll be a welcome respite. But that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. I appreciate y'all very much for checking us out. And make sure you check out the postcast with Mark Farzetta, same YouTube channel, same podcast feed. And I will talk to you tomorrow on our next episode.